If you want to keep your dashboard updated, then you'll want to build in a refresh mechanism into your data sourcing and processing. In a formal business environment, this process is called an automated data pipeline. For the hobbyist, though, you may not need something so elaborate, at least to start. By the end of this lecture, you'll have a basic understanding of how to make sure your hockey data is refreshed on a daily basis.
In this lecture, we'll cover how to refresh the sports data in Power BI, so you always have the latest hockey stats data in your dashboard. To do this, we'll first revisit refreshing the data with the architecture we chose for this project, and then move on to also discussing other options available to you. In our original solution architecture, data refreshing is performed by manually updating the data. This ensures that the data in Power BI stays up to date. However, manually updating the data every day isn't efficient, so you can also consider scheduling updates. Scheduling your refresh can come in the way of scripts that you write yourself or features that are available to you out of the box in Power BI. If you remember back to the original architecture, we had 4 main components. 1, the sports data provider, we use mysportsfeeds.com. 2, Python scripts that retrieve the data from the sports data provider and then write it locally to a CSV file. 3, the normalized and stored CSV files for team and player stats. And 4, the Power BI dashboard, which uses the data in the CSV files. Given the small scale of this project, this course is meant for a hobbyist audience, and we wanted to keep things simple. We've created a somewhat manual process to update the sports data on a daily basis. You can manually run your Python script once daily, say at 11 a.m. Eastern, and this should catch all updates from the previous day. To do this is a 2-step process. The first step is that we write a simple Python wrapper script, which we call the team stats Python file and the player stats file. This wrapper file is a very simple application. Assuming no errors in your Python scripts, your 2 Python files call the sports data provider, retrieve the hockey statistics data, and then update, in our case, they overwrite, the local CSV files. The second step is you click Refresh in your Power BI dashboard, which reloads the CSV files. Because we've updated the CSV files through the overwrite process, the newly updated data is loaded into Power BI. The above 2 steps assumes there are no changes in the structure of your data. That is, if you change the Python script and restructure the data in the CSV files, you'll very likely need to recreate some or all of your dashboards. Here, you can see a bit more information about the newly written Python script. This script uses the subprocess library and, given a path to a file, will call the run function and then execute that file. In the slide, you can see that we have only 2 files, which we've been discussing throughout the course. So the speed and lift to execute this small application is very quick and not resource intensive. However, you can extend the one main file Python application to include more files. For example, we've worked on projects that have 20 to 30 Python files that need to execute. So having a script to automate the execution of all of those files is a great way to manage them. Execution time will vary depending on what those Python applications are doing. As mentioned in the previous slide, you can then refresh the data by using the Refresh button in Power BI, and your dashboard will automatically update. The pros of this simple process is, well, it's simple. You have 2 files, they run sequentially, and the process is quick to execute. Also, if you're a hobbyist and don't mind manually running the data once a day, then this process would be fine. However, there are cons with this approach. Most importantly, it's not automated. The more programming you do, the more you want to automate your code such that you can move on to writing more code. You don't want to be spending your days manually running a data pipeline. Also, if you want to expand the functionality of your application to include more Python files, then you need a more efficient and flexible approach. Fortunately, you have options, which we'll discuss next. Let's first talk about a variation on what we've created in this project. That is, when you have a Python script that retrieves data from a third-party sports provider, stores it locally as CSV files, and needs to update and refresh a Power BI report, here's an ideal way to accomplish this. 1. Schedule the Python script. Set up a scheduled task or cron job to run your Python script at regular intervals. This ensures that the script retrieves the latest data from mysportsfeeds.com and saves it as updated CSV files locally. 2. Store CSV files in a designated folder. Configure your Python script to save the CSV files in a specific folder on your local machine or a shared network location. Make sure the folder is accessible and consistently used for storing the updated CSV files. 3. Power BI data source settings. In Power BI Desktop, create a data source connection to the folder where the CSV files are stored. Go to Get Data, text/CSV, and provide the folder path as the data source location. Power BI will detect and load the CSV files from that folder. 4. Set up scheduled refresh in Power BI service. Publish the Power BI report to the Power BI service and configure scheduled refresh for the dataset. Go to the dataset settings in the Power BI service and set up a schedule for data refresh. Specify the frequency, daily, weekly, etc., and the time when the refresh should occur. 5. Configure data source credentials. Ensure that the data source credentials in Power BI are properly set to access the CSV files. If required, provide the appropriate credentials, username and password for accessing the folder or network location where the CSV files are stored. 6. Monitor and validate. Monitor the refresh process to ensure that the Power BI report is successfully updating with the latest data. Validate the refresh by checking if the visuals and data in the report reflect the new CSV files retrieved by the Python script. By following these steps, you can establish a seamless workflow where your Python script retrieves data from mysportsfeeds.com, saves it locally as CSV files, and Power BI automatically refreshes the report based on the updated CSV files. This ensures that your Power BI report consistently reflects the latest data from the sports provider. Of course, there are other options in Power BI if you want. For example, to configure Power BI so that the data driving the reports is automatically refreshed, you have several options, depending on your specific requirements and data sources. Here are a few approaches. 1. Direct query. If your data source supports it, you can use the direct query mode in Power BI. This mode enables Power BI to directly query the data source in real time whenever a report or a visualization is accessed. With direct query, there's no need to manually refresh the data as the reports are always up to date. However, note that not all data sources are compatible with direct query. 2. Scheduled refresh. Power BI allows you to set up scheduled refreshes for imported or cached data. This feature enables you to define a refresh schedule for your data, specifying how frequently Power BI should retrieve and update the data from the source. You can configure the scheduled refresh in the Power BI service by accessing the dataset settings and defining the refresh frequency and credentials for the data source. 3. Power Automate, formerly Flow. Power Automate is a cloud-based service that allows you to create automated workflows. You can utilize Power Automate to trigger a data refresh in Power BI based on certain events or conditions. For example, you can set up a workflow that automatically refreshes the data when new data is added to the source system or at a specific time of the day. 4. On-premises data gateway. If your data source is located on-premises, you can install and configure an on-premises data gateway. The data gateway establishes a secure connection between your on-premises data sources and the Power BI service. With the gateway in place, you can schedule regular refreshes for your on-premises data sources, ensuring that the reports reflect the latest data. It's important to note that the availability of these options may depend on your Power BI license and the specific data sources you're using. Additionally, configuring automatic data refresh may require administrative privileges or access to the Power BI service settings.
We've outlined a lot of different ways to keep your data refreshed and up to date in Power BI. The goal should always be to automate the refreshing of the data however possible. It might mean you start manually and then work towards a more automated solution. That's okay. As long as you are thinking forward, this is the key. You can check out more ways to refresh Power BI on this Microsoft Learn page. this lecture by doing a super quick walkthrough on how to do this. First, open PowerPoint. Then, format the slide background and add some shapes. You can even add the title text here if you're confident you won't need to change the titles in Power BI. Then, save the slide as an image file. You can then import the image file into Power BI, adjust the fit, and then add your controls to the canvas. This design was super quick and dirty. If you spend a bit more time in PowerPoint, you can create great-looking designs for your dashboards.
You're almost near the end of the course, so congratulations for getting this far. In the next section of this course, we'll be doing a brief overview of how to refresh or update the dashboard. So let's get going.